Why Star Wars Outlaws failed. Is the franchise in trouble? Ubisoft CEO blames Star Wars. Is Star Wars losing its sparkle? Ubisoft CEO thinks so, but the story might be more tangled than a lightsaber duel. When Star Wars Outlaws flopped, Yves Guillemot didn't hesitate to blame the brand itself, calling it a ship adrift in choppy waters. But is that fair? Or are there deeper currents at play? Let's dive in, and spoiler alert, the answer isn't as simple as a Wookiee's temper. Outlaws cancellation, rumored to be axed entirely, not just underperforming, feels like a punch to the gut for fans. KVS was supposed to be the next big thing. Yet Guillemot's finger-pointing ignores the chaos surrounding other recent Star Wars projects. Take The Acolyte, Disney's $200 million gamble on a TV show that sparked a firestorm from day one. From racial controversies to a 15% Rotten Tomatoes score, Richard Artsecrest parrots. It became a lightning rod for negativity. Even after its abrupt cancellation, debates about its ambition raged on. Could Outlaws have been a victim of this storm? Or is Star Wars simply struggling to keep up with its own legacy? Then there's Skeleton Crew, Disney Plus's attempt at a Goonies meets Stranger Things vibe. Its 2-episode premiere earned just 384 million minutes of watch time, pale compared to The Mandalorian's 1,032 million. But here's the twist. The Mandalorian thrived because it leaned into something Star Wars rarely does: relatability. Din Djarin, the brooding bounty hunter, isn't a Jedi or a Skywalker. He's a regular guy, fighting pirates in dingy Gars, and forming a father-son bond with Grogu, aka Baby Yoda. Who doesn't love a heartwarming dad and kid story? And let's not forget nostalgia. Obi-Wan Kenobi and Ahsoka prove that old favorites still draw crowds. Even with mixed reviews, fans flock to see Ian McGregor and Hayden Christensen reunite after 17 years. Or catch up with Ahsoka, a character first introduced in 2008. Childhood comfort sells, and Disney knows it. But is this reliance on the past a strength or a crutch? Now Disney's shifting gears. With streaming labeled effectively dead by insiders, the future looks movie-heavy. Upcoming films like The Mandalorian and Grogu and Starfighter are banking on box office magic. But what if they stumble in China, where Star Wars has historically struggled? And what if fans crave more than family-friendly adventures? Andor's gritty spy drama showed there's room for prestige, but will audiences stick around? So is Star Wars a fading star, or just evolving? Guillemot's quick to blame the brand, but the real issue might be how it's being handled. Are studios prioritizing safe, nostalgic bets over bold new ideas? Or is the galaxy simply too big to keep everyone happy? Here's the kicker. Star Wars isn't a monolith. It's a universe of stories, and its future depends on balancing innovation with legacy. But here's where it gets controversial. What if the real problem isn't the brand's popularity, but the way studios are choosing to tell its stories? And this is the part most people miss: the risk of leaning too heavily on nostalgia or too far into the unknown. So what's your take? Is Star Wars on the right track, or is it losing its way? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We want to hear your side of the story. Ubisoft blames gamers for failure of Star Wars Outlaws. Full analysis. Ubisoft, the renowned video game developer, is facing backlash from the gaming community after publicly shifting the blame for its recent game failures onto its customers. In a surprising turn of events, Ubisoft's latest financial report attributes the poor performance of titles like Star Wars Outlaws not to the game's quality, but to negative feedback from gamers and the influence of internet trends. The company's CEO, Yves Guillemot, went so far as to say that Star Wars Outlaws failed because the brand that it belonged to was in a bit of choppy waters. A statement that seems to ignore the massive success of Star Wars in other media, such as the hit TV shows The Mandalorian and Andor. But here's where it gets controversial. Ubisoft's financial report also claims that the company is actually adding microtransactions to its games to make them more fun for players. This raises questions about the company's priorities and its commitment to delivering quality gaming experiences. Moreover, Ubisoft's report suggests that the company is facing risks of damage to its reputation resulting from online bashing, a term that seems to describe organized criticism on social media and specialized gaming platforms. The report goes on to blame content distribution platforms like Steam, seemingly targeting gamers who express their opinions in forums and reviews. This reluctance to take responsibility for the quality of its games is disappointing. Instead of acknowledging that the games themselves might not be living up to expectations, Ubisoft is blaming outside factors such as gamers and its customer base. This raises the question: is Ubisoft truly committed to delivering quality gaming experiences, or is it more concerned with protecting its profits? Controversial interpretation. By blaming gamers and content distribution platforms, Ubisoft is essentially dismissing the voices of its own customer base. Is this a wise business strategy in an era where customer feedback is more accessible and influential than ever? Thought-provoking question for readers. What do you think? Should game developers like Ubisoft take full responsibility for the quality of their games, or is it fair to shift some blame onto the gaming community? Let's hear your thoughts in the comments below. Star Wars Outlaws sequel canceled. What went wrong? The recent news surrounding the Star Wars franchise has stirred quite a bit of conversation, particularly regarding the fate of the anticipated sequel to Star Wars Outlaws. Reports indicate that Ubisoft had plans for a follow-up to the game, but those plans have now been scrapped due to disappointing sales figures. This revelation raises eyebrows and invites further discussion about the future of the franchise. According to sources, Star Wars Outlaws, which launched in 2024, sold approximately 1 million copies during its initial release period. While this number might seem impressive at first glance, it fell significantly short of expectations, especially considering the game's substantial production budget. As a result, the game was deemed a considerable failure by the studio. In a recent interview with IGN, Ubisoft CEO Yves Guillemot addressed the game's underwhelming performance, attributing it to the overall state of the Star Wars brand at the time. He stated, "Outlaws was released at a time when the brand that it belonged to was in a bit of choppy waters." This comment highlights the challenges that the franchise has faced, which may have impacted the game's reception. The information about the canceled sequel comes from Tom Henderson, a well-known journalist, during an episode of the Insider Gaming podcast aired on July 24th. Henderson revealed that while Ubisoft had initially intended to develop a sequel to Star Wars Outlaws, they ultimately decided to abandon the project. He clarified that the sequel was not yet in full development, but was still in the early stages of pre-production. Ubisoft also recently canceled Star Wars Outlaws 2 because that was planned and in the works, Henderson explained. It wasn't set in stone or in full production. It was very, very early. They looked at Outlaws 2 and thought, let's not do that. This decision, while disappointing, is not entirely unexpected given the mixed reception of Star Wars Outlaws. Many players found it challenging to connect with the game, and Guillemot's acknowledgement of its lackluster sales aligns with Henderson's insights. It's disheartening to see a game with potential fall short, especially when it had the opportunity to evolve. Star Wars Outlaws had its share of controversies, particularly regarding its gameplay mechanics. One of the most criticized aspects was the inclusion of forced stealth sections, which many players found unenjoyable. Ubisoft eventually released a patch months after the game's launch to remove these sections, significantly improving the overall experience. However, for many fans, this change came too late, and they had already moved on from the game. It's unfortunate, because the updates that followed truly transformed the RPG into something special. With the addition of the Star Wars Outlaws, A Pirate's Fortune DLC, the game has become a much more engaging experience. However, similar to Sony's Days Gone, which also faced the troubled launch, Star Wars Outlaws suffered from a rocky debut that left a lasting impression. In today's gaming landscape, first impressions are crucial, and the initial reception of Outlaws continues to overshadow its later improvements. Despite the setbacks, I genuinely believe that Star Wars Outlaws deserves a second look, especially for those who enjoy RPGs. As a fan of the Star Wars universe, I found it to be one of the better games that authentically captures the essence of the series' lore and world building. Regrettably, the prospects for a sequel now seem bleak. However, it wouldn't be surprising if, in the years to come, Outlaws finds a dedicated following among fans who appreciate its unique contributions to the franchise. What do you think? Do you believe that Star Wars Outlaws has the potential to become a cult classic? Or do you think its initial failure will overshadow any future appreciation? Share your thoughts in the comments.